Well, as you can see, I've been working hard and I have quite a mess here, but I just want to take you through the next, some of the things that I've been working on so that you're not lost. So I have the paper that I have done for my front cover and my back cover all adhered down. And then I wanted to have a tie enclosure because as bulk is added, I want you to be able to close it. So I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do this. And I got some twill tape that I had, just that you get in a package, but it was too white. So I took it and I soaked it in a cup of tea and just barely dyed it. So it was just a little bit off. A little bit off white, a little bit of a tea dye. And then what I did is I took my Crop-A-Dile, and I'll show you on this one. I punched a hole right here with my Crop-A-Dile, and I set an eyelet in it, and then I took my hot glue gun and glued the tail down. So on the back side, then what I did is I took the inside cover and adhered it down over the eyelet and over the tail so that they're hidden in the sandwich there. So let me show you how I do that on this one. I like this Glue and Seal from Ink Essentials. It's a matte finish and it works a lot like Mod Podge. If you're familiar with Mod Podge, you have a little brush. Now I ran out, so I had bought a bigger one, and the bigger one didn't come with a brush, so I saved my little bottle so I would always have the brush. But you can use it for gluing like you would Mod Podge, but then you can also use it to go over and it will dry clear in a matte finish. So I'm actually going to do that in just a minute. I'm going to show you what I'm doing with that to finish up the binding area of my book. So let's just quickly get this down. One of the things I really like about this glue, besides the fact that it dries clear and it's so easy to use, but it also does not leave bubbles in my finished project, and I really like that. So I'm just lining that all up, and I have, it doesn't glue super or dry super fast, so I can play with it a little bit. I don't have a lot of give in it, but I can play with it just a little bit to make sure that it's all lined up the way I want it to be and smoothed out. So now I have the outside of my book and I have the inside of my book, both front and back here. So now we're going to come to the next step, which is another thing that I use the glue for. I like this tissue tape from Tim Holtz. I'm choosing the music notes because, again, my friend likes music, and I'm afraid I'm going to get off camera here a bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay down a strip as straight as I can just by eyeballing it across the edge like this. And I'm going to tear it. Kind of tore that off. Probably ought to start over. I'm overlapping the edge of the paper and the black original seam that was part of my composition book. Now I know music notes have nothing to do with sewing, but that's okay because this is something that's a part of my friend's life. Then I'll do the same thing. Now this tape is sticky, but it's not super sticky, not super strong, but that's okay. So now I'll do the same thing from this edge and overlap it going the other direction. Now a lot of this binding will actually be covered up as we finish up the book, but it still peeks through just a little bit, and I don't want the black binding. I also don't want the edges of my paper to be exposed for a couple reasons. First, I just think that this gives it a more finished look, but the other reason is I don't want it to possibly catch on something. So now what I'll do is I'll just trim up my book here, or trim off the paper edges here, just like so. Clean that up, move that aside. And now this is where the next step using my glue-in-seal comes in. I take my brush and I'm going to go all the way up the binding. Now, like I said, I know that it dries clear because I've done this many times. It looks milky white right now, and that's okay because I know that it's going to dry clear. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going over the top, and it's just giving it kind of a finished look, but also it's helping hold down. I overlap into the edge of the paper because it's helping to hold down that tape at the edges that might come up if it weren't held down. So I will let that dry for a little bit, and then I'll come back and do a second coat, and then we'll work on the next step of the book. So we're just about finished with the journal, and I just want to show you a very important step. I've actually started it here, but you need to take a thin ribbon and you need to choose 6 or 7 different ribbons, whether different colors. I like to do them different colors. Sometimes I can't always do them different colors, but they need to be relatively thin. And then you need to find the center point of your book. So when I'm looking here, it's very easy to find the center because composition books are actually sewn down the center. And so the center point of the book is where the seam line is. And you're going to put one of your ribbons there. And then randomly between the beginning and the end, in several places, you're going to put another ribbon. The reason you need to do this is because as you add bulk to your journal, whether you're writing or whether you are putting pictures or whatever you're doing to your journal needs that bulk, or needs that ribbon to help hold it together. So this is the last one to tie. And in the different journals that I've made, I've done different things. Sometimes I've put charms on almost all of the ribbon. Sometimes I've not put charms at all. Well, I think I always put at least one charm. In this book, I'm just going to put one charm. So what I've done is I've tied it in a knot here, and I have knots kind of going up and down because I want each of those to be a little bit different. And I don't want to put charms on all of them. I couldn't find the sewing charms I was looking for. So I have all these knots, and then on this one, this is the one that's kind of a bolder color that kind of stands out. I'm putting one charm, and the charm I'm using is a Tim Holtz charm, and it says it's a Muse token, and it says genuine. So I'm just going to tie it off here and tie it into a knot, and then it will kind of hang down the side of my book. Now, one little trick that I learned, you could put fray check on here if you wished, and on some spots I did use fray check, but on this type of ribbon it works really well if you just take a match off to the side and just very lightly singe the end, and that will keep it from fraying. So now I have my charm here. So then I want to flip it over to the front and show you what I've done. So I have taken, this is the tea-dyed twill tape that we looked at earlier. Now what I have done is I have taken some off-white lace and I have hot glued it down here, and then I have this braided trim that I kind of want to keep away from the purple as much as possible because they don't match, but they're all kind of Victorian looking trims and colors. And so then I took this wine colored braided trim and I hot glued that over the top, and then I used fray check along the edges of these so that it wouldn't fray out. So now we are just about to finish up the front of the book. So what I've done here, and I'm just going to set this here, this is that Tim Holtz die that I showed you, and I cut them each in chipboard, and then on this one I cut it in sticky back canvas, and I used the Victorian Velvet Distress ink and distressed around the edges, and then I took my fingernail and I just kind of distressed the canvas there just to kind of rough it up, give it a older look, a more vintage look. And then I took some ink and I had an ink refill, and I actually used it like paint, and I painted the top and the bottom of the canvas. But the problem that did is the ink kind of ran down into my dress form, and I didn't like that. So I took a little bit of that same twill tape that I used here on the side of the book and just went across the top and the bottom. So that's our dress form. And then this is the spool that also comes with the set. And in the front, I did chipboard, and then in the front, I took just a piece of craft cardstock scrap and put it over the top, and then I just took some pink and white, I believe it's called cupcake twine, from the Twinery, and just wrapped it around. I hot glued it in the back where you won't see it. And then with the button, again, I used the canvas, I distressed it on the side, and then added some twill tape through the buttonholes. So what I want to do here is I want to use hot glue to get this down. I just think it'll hold a little better. I know I'm going off camera here a little bit. My glue is needing a new stick, so we'll get it started and then I'll come back on. So I'm just using hot glue to glue that down. I want a good firm hold on it, and I think the hot glue will provide that. So I'll just kind of set that about there. Looks about right. Kind of clean off here while it's still hot. I don't want the glue showing there. And then using the hot glue again, I'll hot glue the spool down. Just kind of at an angle, just kind of tossing it down. Little threads I'll go back and clean up. And then my button, I'll do the same with it. This is a low temp glue gun, so I'm able to work with it fairly quickly after touching it, so that I don't have to worry about burning my fingers. I just want to clean some of that up. So now there's only one thing left to do on the front. I took the stamps from Hey Andrew Design from the Amazing You set, and I chose You Are, Loved, and My Friend. And then I also used this little heart, and taking the sticky back canvas, I stamped them in the same Victorian velvet distress ink, and then I inked around the edges to just distress it. And I am going to put that down kind of randomly on there. I combined the loved and the heart so that it just kind of looked as if it was one stamp. And this will stick right on to the book, kind of randomly across. And the front of our book is decorated. Now I could go back and kind of rough up the edges of that canvas if I wanted to, but I think just with wear it will eventually do that on its own. And then we could tie the book here on the side. And we have our journal. So here's what the front of it looks like. Here's the charm coming around that says genuine. Now there's a couple more things that I did to the inside that I wanted to show you. Just a couple of ideas. The first thing that I did here is I took a piece of plastic, kind of like acetate that I had picked up from Recollections, and I cut it on the inside to fit on the inside here and make a pocket out of it. And then I adhered it down with just my normal ATG, but I didn't want the adhesive to show, so I used the same paper that I used on the inside of my cover, and I ran it through the Cuttlebug with the Tim Holtz stitching alterations. And then I inked over the top of it with vintage photo so that you could see the stitches. And then in this little pocket, I tucked in a package of tags that she could use in journaling and a couple other things that if she wanted to use in different places. I decided not to go ahead and make the tabs. I don't really think that they're necessary. And then this is my first page here, and what I did here is I just scrunched up the page, and I took my velvet Victorian velvet distress ink and went all over the page, and I'm leaving this blank because I want to write a note to my friend that will be underneath this flap. And then I took my a piece of paper and I scored it across the top here so that it would open and close very easily. And then I put a picture of the two of us on it and this little tag that says, I can't even imagine where I would be today were it not for that handful of friends who have given me a heart full of joy. And that's just a quote I found in some papers that I had, some tags that I had from somewhere that I've had for years. So that completes the journal. We've got it all done. Let's just do a quick run through it. We've got the different pages here. Now in past journals, and if you look on my blog, you'll find other journals where I have crinkled many of the pages and distressed them. This one, because it's for someone else, I'm not going to do that. They could if they chose to. But if you'd like to see how to do that, just go to djsundry.blogspot.com and click on the tab that says journals. And there are several books and different journals for more ideas on different ones that I've done. But here we are using all the stamps from the scripture saying set from K. Andrew Designs. We've got the different papers going through here. And we just have a nice journal. So thanks for watching. I hope this inspires you to make a journal, and have a great day.